much, or else I taped them together, so you have one more. Hold on. Otherwise, yeah, if you wear those, you'll have to see if that represents your Testing. System. Oh, it's up there. Testing. I hear it. All right. Testing. Hear it? It's there. A little bit higher, maybe.
Should I go, Alistair? You give me a thumbs up then. Okay. Okay. All right, may I have your attention? Since we're having some microphone challenges, this mic doesn't actually work for the room, it works for live stream, apparently. I do want to let you know about that. Live stream will be available right now. It's available at bgsda.org, and you follow the link that's there. So you can share that with friends, family, etc. There might be an update to that, but we'll give that when that's available. Good evening. Welcome to the Law of Life seminar with Dr. Mark Sandoval. We're glad that you're here. My name is Tom Proudfoot, and I'll be your MC for the event. A couple of housekeeping items to start off. There are restrooms on every floor, 1 through 4. There's water in the back for you to enjoy. There's copy paper if you need it and pens. Please take advantage of that. If you have a need that is not addressed that we might be able to help you with, I want to point out to you our English event coordinator, which is Gloria. Raise your hand. And on the Spanish side, Danielise. Give us a wave. Thank you. And so feel free to address that. If we can help you, we want to be of help. We want to be of service. We're glad that you battled the parking and the raindrops and were patient with us to get started tonight. We're glad that you could join us. Before we invite Dr. Mark to begin his presentation right away, I want to ask the BGSDA church pastor, Stephen Eccles, to have a brief prayer. Pastor?
Okay, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for everything that has led up to this moment, to the beginning of this seminar. We thank you for all the evidence that you have answered our prayers, despite the practical and technical challenges. And we thank you that you have brought Dr. Sandoval here to us for this weekend. We thank you for his sacrifice of time. And Lord, I now want to pray that your Holy Spirit will fill this place, that you will fill Dr. Mark again with wisdom and power to deliver the message that you've given him, and that you will bless each person here with a portion of your Spirit so that each one of us may understand the message that you have for us, because, Lord, we are sure that you have a personal message for each person here. So we pray, Lord, that we each receive what you are trying to give us this evening, and bless all the practical aspects of the event so that it may run smoothly. We pray all this in the name of the one true Savior, our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
And I'll tell you more about Dr. Mark tomorrow, but right now I want to turn it over to him so he can get his program in on time for you. God bless.
All right. Well, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here with you and to be able to spend this weekend together. I'm grateful for those that are here at this time, and those that will be here through the weekend. Again, my name is Mark Sandoval, and I am hailing from Missouri. And we did not always live in Missouri. Actually, I spent about a decade in Alabama at Uchee Pines Institute, which, if you don't know, is a lifestyle center and where individuals come to get off their medications, reverse their diseases, learn how to take care of themselves from a natural standpoint. And I was the president and medical director there for a while. Also the health ministries director of the Gulf States Conference, which included Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle. And so was helping coordinate health work there. And just in November of 2021, we moved to Missouri to start a new ministry called New Paradigm Ministries. And New Paradigm Ministries is seeking to share truth for life. Life stands for living free, improving relationships, finding purpose, and experiencing health. And what we've done in the first year of the ministry is basically have been doing virtual counseling and health consultations, myself and Dr. Dorothy Lewis, and starting to work on resources to help individuals to find freedom We operate a Monday evening Zoom group session for individuals. Then we cover a whole bunch of different topics. Right now we're actually covering health. So we looked at the foundations of health 2 weeks ago. Foundations of Health Part 2 last week. We're going to be looking at Health by Faith on this coming Monday, and continuing to look at health. We cover all sorts of different topics, but also have a long question and answer period where you can ask about anything. Usually it revolves around relationship type of issues. What do I do with my narcissistic spouse? What do I do if I am the narcissistic spouse? Actually, I've never had that question. Because usually the narcissist does not recognize themselves. And other things of that nature. And so we have fun, but we get serious as well. And currently, actually, we're working on developing a 1-year recovery program that can be used in churches or community centers on a weekly basis in order to help individuals walk to freedom, and to put together a book, a workbook, and presentations for each of those, plus a facilitator's guide, so that we can help individuals in many locations find freedom as well. And this evening we are going to be looking at the law of life. And the law of life, as we will come to understand, is a foundational concept that plays into every area and every aspect of our lives. And it's very vital for us to understand. And we're going to first look at it in context of health, and then we're going to look at it in the context of relationships, and then we're going to look at it in the context of our spiritual lives and beliefs and other things of that nature, and come to see how it impacts us in many different ways, and why understanding this concept is key to freedom from many of the things that we struggle from. So in looking at health, we're going to look at a tree. Most of us are familiar with trees. You have very beautiful trees around here. We love the dogwoods and the redbuds and the others that are blooming at this time. When you walk up to a tree, what is it that you see, that you notice first off? All right, the leaves, right? So you might pay attention to the leaves. Right now, since it's blooming season, it might be the flowers. You might pay attention to the shape of the tree and so on. What is it that you usually don't pay attention to on a tree? The roots. Because in many trees, you don't see them, right? They're underground, they're covered. That's not part of it that we usually pay much attention to. Now, from a health standpoint, if you have a tree that has bad fruit and bad leaves, is it going to fix the problem to pluck off the bad fruit and the bad leaves? Well, no, of course not, right? Now, it might help. It's going to decrease the burden of disease, but it's not actually going to fix the problem, because the problem lies deeper than just the fruit and the leaves, or the parts that are manifesting the dysfunction, right? In our health setting, the fruit and the leaves represent symptoms. You have things like pain, itching, coughing, runny nose, sore throat, constipation, diarrhea. I mean, all of these are different kinds of symptoms that an individual might have. And how do we usually treat symptoms in America? All right, so pills. So there's usually a pill for every ill, and usually there's multiple pills for every ill. And you can try out this pill, that pill, or the other pill for your ill. And that's usually how we go about it. Now, let's imagine that you have back pain, and that back pain is right there in the middle of your shoulder blades, and it's just killing you, it's stabbing. It came on rapidly. It's difficult for you to move. You can't lay on your back. And maybe you take some Tylenol or ibuprofen that takes just the slightest little edge off of it, but it's still really painful. And so you end up going into the emergency department, and they're busy and they can't do much, but they give you a prescription for some medication. You get it filled, you take it, you feel better a little bit, but you still can't lay on your back and things are still a problem. You end up going to your family doctor, and your family doctor says, well, let's give you a stronger medication to help with this. And so you're feeling slightly better, still can't lay on your back, it's still killing you. And so you finally go to get a second opinion, and somebody actually happens to do an exam. They find out there's a reason why you have back pain, right? Because that narcissist just stabbed you in the back, right? Or whoever they were. So there's a reason that you have the back pain. Did the medication take care of the cause? No, of course not. It didn't take care of the cause because it's not meant to. Really, it's not meant to. All it does is it takes care of the symptoms so that it doesn't feel so bad. Now, praise the Lord, there's something to take care of the symptoms. If you cut off your finger, or if you had some kind of trauma, or you were in a car accident or something, at least there's something you can take to help out, and great. But to live on treating symptoms without getting at the cause is problematic. And it's problematic for a number of different things, right? Because the cause does not reside where the manifestation is. So if you've got bad fruit and bad leaves, then do the fruit and the leaves grow by themselves? No, they don't. What do they grow off of? All right. No, well, I don't know. I haven't ever seen a plant yet that had fruit growing off of the roots. I've seen plants where the fruit's growing off of the trunk. That's quite interesting. But it usually grows off of the branches. That's right. And the branches are going to represent our behaviors. All right. And now the symptoms, forgot that analogy. So the symptoms are like the fire alarm. Is the fire alarm a problem? All right, no, the fire alarm is not a problem. The fire is the problem, right? So the fire alarm is actually part of the solution so that it can alert you that there is a problem, right? It's there to alert you that there is a problem. Now, if you had the fire alarm going off and your solution to that is to take a pillow and put it over the fire alarm, is that a good solution? No, it's not, because your arms are going to get tired eventually holding that pillow up, and you want to get back to sleep, so you need some duct tape so that you can tape that down so you can go back to bed and get a comfortable night's rest while the fire alarm is doing its, in the background. Or not. No, not a good plan. All right, that's not a good plan. All right. So if you burn down in the house, that's burning down with the fire alarm that you put the pillow over, well, that's your problem. Right? That's your problem. Because there was a fire alarm to let you know there was something wrong. The fire alarm is part of the solution, not part of the problem. But the fire alarm is only active when there's a problem. Right? It's only active when there's a problem. So symptoms are on the side of helping fix the problem. They're not actually a part of the problem, but they let you know that there is a problem. And to simply take the symptoms away is like muffling the fire alarm. So the fruit and the leaves grow off of the branches, and those branches represent your behaviors. If you have good branches, you're going to have good fruit and good leaves. If you've got bad branches, you're going to end up with bad fruit and bad leaves, right? Now, what kind of behaviors are there? Well, there's things like breathing. Anybody do that? Okay. What about eating? Anybody doing that? Yeah, and drinking? Yeah, I don't mean, yeah, we usually refer to, waters, that's drinking too, right? So yes, we're all involved in these different behaviors, and if the behaviors are good, it's going to lead to good fruit and good leaves, good symptoms, right? And if the behaviors are bad, well, then you can expect there's probably going to be some bad symptoms coming along at some point, right? So now, if you had a tree that had bad fruit and bad leaves up here, and you prune the branch, does that help the problem? I didn't say does it fix the problem, I said does it help the problem? Well, yeah, it'll help the problem. Just like plucking off the fruit and the leaves will somewhat help the problem, but it won't fix the problem. So if we go from symptoms and then we go to behavioral modification, that will also help the problem, but it won't fix the problem, right? It won't fix the problem. So I went from a conventional practice. I am board certified in emergency medicine and lifestyle medicine, and so ER was my first career. And so, yes, I worked in the emergency department and ICU and urgent care and other places. And so symptom care was a common thing that we did. You've got an ill, we've got something to do about it, kick you out the door so we can take care of somebody else who's got a problem, so we can kick you out the door and get to somebody else who might have to admit to get to somebody else, and so on. It's always somebody coming through. But I decided that that wasn't working because I also got involved in family practice, and in family practice something happens that doesn't usually happen in ER. ER, you almost have a constant stream of new patients coming through that you don't have a relationship with, you don't know who they are, you have to figure out information from them quickly and make decisions rapidly. In family practice, you have somebody that comes to you, and then guess what? And they come back. And then they come back. And they keep coming back. And I keep telling them to come back. And I keep prescribing them medication for their hypertension or their high cholesterol or their diabetes or other things like that. And they still have diabetes and high blood pressure and high cholesterol. And so I got to prescribe something else or increase the dosage and so on. And I realized, you know what? I'm not actually fixing anything. I'm not actually getting to the cause. And so, I mean, I didn't go into medicine just to put Band-Aids on bleeding arteries. I went into medicine to fix things. And I wasn't fixing things. And so I didn't like that. And so I decided it was time for a change. And so I jumped off the conventional ship and I went to Uchee Pines. And believe me, I thought I was going off into Never Never Land. Like, what am I getting into? I mean, herbs and, you know, all of this kind of stuff. It's kind of oogly, you know, from a medical standpoint. Doctors are kind of trained to be a bit skeptical of anything and everything else, just letting you know. And so I was still a bit skeptical too. So I went to Uchee Pines, and there was this old woman there by the name of Dr. Agatha Thrash. Actually, her name was Agatha, but anyways, everybody called her Agatha. So Dr. Agatha Thrash, and she was taking care of patients and running the lifestyle center and so on. And I saw some of the patients there, and I was just like, oh, I don't know. I think they should go to the hospital. And she's like, Dr. Mark, it's okay. We've been doing this a long time. Just have some patience. You'll see that this starts to work and whatever. And I'm kind of antsy, and I'm watching, and I got surprised at how powerful lifestyle change and natural remedies could be in the context of helping individuals with their disease and so on. And it really shocked me. And my skepticism, it took a while, but my skepticism started wearing away until I started really kind of getting into it, you know. But one of the things that I found, and one of the problems that I ran into, was this thing about longevity. The individuals that I've seen that have done the best in the long term are those who have been most consistent with their lifestyle plan. But how many patients have I taken care of that were not consistent with their lifestyle plan? A whole lot of them. A whole lot of them, right? And so a lot of people that have stuff coming back, and it ends up becoming a problem again. And so I'm wondering, all right, what else is needed? What's going on here, right? Now, Do the branches grow from themselves? No. What do the branches grow off of? The trunk. And the trunk represents our needs. You need what you need because you are what you are. Now, we need, as humans, we need oxygen, we need water, we need food. And that food, of course, includes many different nutrients, and those nutrients are in different concentrations. And all of these are things that we need. Can you change what you need? Can you decide today that you don't need oxygen? Well, you can make that decision, but that decision will not impact reality. Because when you stop breathing, something will happen. You will start having a sensation, and that sensation is uncomfortable, and that uncomfortable sensation will get worse, and you will eventually get induced to breathe. And if you are stubborn enough to pass out by holding your breath, well, your stubbornness will end when you pass out, and you'll start breathing again. Right? And so you can decide you don't need oxygen, but that doesn't mean that you will ever not need oxygen. You can't change what you need. You need food. You can't change that. You need water. You can't change that. So if you have a teeter-totter and the teeter-totter goes up and down, that center point that doesn't go up and down is called the fulcrum. Right? That's the point that doesn't go up and down at all. And in the human, the fulcrum is our needs. Our needs do not change. We cannot change our needs. That's fixed. So if our behaviors do not match the needs, that's going to end up with bad fruit and bad leaves. Right? If the behaviors do not match what you need, then that's going to end up with bad fruit and bad leaves. But if the behavior matches your needs, then you're going to supply what you need, and then you're going to end up with good fruit and good leaves. So it's important to know what an individual needs so that that can be supplied so that an individual can do well. Right? But why do you do what you do? Why do you do what you do? Habit. All right, habit. Okay. Yeah. All right, what's that? All right, what you've learned. All right, desires. Okay. Yeah, desires. Okay, because you have something to gain. That's right. Yes, we do things for the gain. And what we do for the gain is because we believe that it's a gain. Right? We believe it's a gain. And so the roots represent our beliefs. It's not obvious what an individual believes right off the bat. You've got to have a conversation with them. You've got to ask questions. You've got to find out, what's going on in order to understand what they believe. But if you stay around an individual long enough and watch them in different circumstances and situations, then you'll find out what an individual believes, because ultimately what they believe, they will do. Right? What you believe will manifest itself in what you do. So let's say that you believe that you need Dr. Pepper. Do you need Dr. Pepper? No, you don't. Right? Everything that you need was in the first 7 days of creation. Right? Dr. Pepper was not there. Right? But Dr. Pepper does contain some things that you need. It contains water. That's the majority of Dr. Pepper is water, right? So you need water, and it does have some sugar in it, and you can live on sugar, and you actually need some sugar. But there's things in it that you don't need. So if you believe that you need it, you're going to drink it, and then you're going to get some of what you need, but you're going to get some of what you don't need. Is that going to end up with good fruit and good leaves or bad fruit and bad leaves? It's going to end up with bad fruit and bad leaves eventually, right? So what you believe is important because that will manifest in how you behave. And so I found as I was working with patients at the Lifestyle Center that if all I did was help them to modify how they behave, but I didn't get to what they believed, we didn't make a lasting difference in their life, right? We had to get to the beliefs. And so I started to understand, okay, this is an issue more of the mind than it is of the body. The body is just manifesting the issues of the mind. What you eat is because of what you think, right? Because you think about choosing something to eat, right? Your lifestyle is a manifestation of your beliefs, and that lifestyle is not going to change until you change what you believe, right? So if you have a tree that has bad fruit and bad leaves, well, you got to get down into the ground and figure out what's going on, because while the problem might manifest in the leaves, it originates in the ground. Now, a tree needs, of course, it's going to need carbon dioxide, it's going to need water, and it's going to need nutrients as well. We need oxygen rather than the carbon dioxide. And that tree cannot move around to go look for what it needs. What it needs to be brought to it and supplied to it. So if you have a tree that is not doing well, what do you need to check? Yeah, not just the roots, the soil. That's right, you need to check the soil, because there's going to be a soil problem in that tree. And the soil represents the sources. That's what you're taking from. Now, you can have sources that have too little. You can have ground that's arid and it doesn't have enough water for that tree. You can have ground that has too much water and now the tree is waterlogged and it's not going to do well either, unless it's a cypress tree. Or you have just the wrong stuff. So you just happen to be watering that tree with diesel and it didn't work out so well, right? Because I don't know a tree that grows well on diesel, right? Now, these are the various different things that we need. Is there anybody here that needs love? Yeah? Okay. Anybody here that does not need love? Okay, good. All right, so all of us do. Some of us, none of us don't, except for those that are sleeping. Okay. All right, so we need love. All right, that's good. You need love because of what you are. Can you change the fact that you need it? No. You can't change what you need, right? And you need what you need because of what you are. Now, everything that you need, the thing you need comes from where? Inside of you or outside of you? It comes from outside of you, right? The oxygen that you need to live by comes from outside of you. The water that you need to live by comes from outside of you. The food that you need to live by comes outside of you. And how are you going to live? If it stays outside? Only if it comes inside, right? The only way you're going to live is if it comes inside. And who is it that has to bring it inside? Somebody else? Oh, you. Right? You have to bring it in. You have to eat, you've got to drink, you've got to breathe. The reason that you eat is because you need food. The reason that you drink is because you need water. The reason that you breathe is because you need oxygen, right? So the actions are there in order to bring in and to supply what you need, right? And so only when you have a source that is good, your beliefs match your needs so that your behaviors bring in what you need, then you're going to end up with good fruit and good leaves. But if anything in that pathway gets messed up, then you can end up with bad fruit and bad leaves at the end. Now, when it comes to love, what's the action that brings in love? Okay, I heard relationship. All right. So let's say that you were having a bad day and you came home and in the mail was a letter, and you get the letter and it's a handwritten one and you notice who it's from, and who it's from is the right person, and you open the letter and in that letter it says, "Dear so-and-so, I've been missing you and thinking about you," and and remembering the last times that we spent together, and I can't wait until I see you again, and and so on, and fills in different details that are known to you two only, and says love so and so at the end, XOXO, and so on. So how do you feel when you're done with the letter? You feel happy. Anybody feel loved? All right. So how much love was in the letter? I mean, the letter itself. I mean, can you examine it? Can you extract love from it? Can you pull it together, put it in a vial, mix it up, and then inject it, and then somebody else now feels all lovey, and so on after you've done so? No? All right. So how do you get love from the letter? Okay, you read it. All right? So the letter does contain information because physical things can transmit or contain and transmit information. And the information is in the form of pen or pencil or ink or whatever it is, and it's in letters that we call them and words, and we've been taught this letter means this, and these sets of letters means this word has this meaning, these words together has this meaning, and so on, and these sentences have this meaning. And what we do is we take the information that is there, we extract the information, and we determine that it means that I am loved, right? And when I do that and I determine that I am loved and I believe it, well, guess what? Now I have it, right? Now I have it. So it's a process of thought. It's a process of thinking. It's an evaluating of the information that determines that it is love, and believing it, now I have it, right? So love is brought in by thinking, just like food is brought in by eating, water by drinking, and oxygen by breathing, right? So what if we beliefs again, what if we believe that people are the source of the love that we need? Gonna work out well? What if a tree decided that another tree was its source of everything? And that tree thought another tree was its source of everything. And that tree thought another tree was its source of everything. And so every tree had its roots in another tree. And all trees were rooted in all trees. What would happen to the whole system? Yeah. They'd all die. Because no tree can be the source for another tree. Right? No tree can be the source for another tree. Because every tree needs the same thing. And you can't be the source of what you need. You can't. Nobody can. Nothing can be the source of what it needs. Right? So all things that function are governed by law, and all laws that govern function are unchangeable. And proper function is only maintained when we stay within the law, but when we get outside of the law, that's where dysfunction comes into play. Right? And when we talk about law, there is a fundamental law of all nature, and that fundamental law is that anything that came into existence, right? Anything that came into existence does not exist or function from itself. It has needs. It's dependent upon materials, resources, power outside of itself in order to exist and to function, and if it's alive, to live. But also, nothing that came into existence exists or functions for itself. Everything will take that power, those materials and resources, and it will pass stuff along to others. In fact, we do that as humans. Anybody here has ever kept every bite of food you ever ate? Yeah, you can't, right? You would die. You wouldn't fit in this building, that's for sure. Even at your age, you wouldn't make it through the door. At our age, we probably wouldn't make it in this room. We'd just be huge if we kept every bite of food that we ate. What if you kept every swallow of drink that you ever drank and every breath of air that you ever breathed? It just wouldn't work. So you take, but then you give, right? You take in something, you give something else. You transform it in the process, and you put something else out. And something else lives from or benefits from what you give away. You don't live from and benefit from what you give away. Something else does, right? So no tree benefits from its own fruit. You don't benefit from your own, what term should I use here? Elimination. You don't benefit from it yourself. Other things do. You benefit from the tree's fruit. Nothing benefits from what it produces. Something else does, right? But nothing does it from itself. It's dependent upon materials, resources outside of itself in order for it to function, even for things that are inanimate and don't have life. A rock will take of the heat of the sun when the sun is beating on it and it's available, but when the sun is gone and everything is cooling off, then the rock starts giving away heat to that which is around it, including the little lizard that likes to live under the rock and stay cooler during the day and warmer during the nighttime. Right? So it doesn't matter if it's animate or inanimate, everything that has come into existence functions by this fundamental law. In essence, everything takes to give. Right? Everything takes to give. And from this come things like thermodynamics that tell us that all energy necessary for a system to function must come from outside of that system. So it won't function by its own power. It's got to have power outside of itself in order to function. And cause and effect, where we know that every effect has a cause and every cause produces an effect. There is no effect without a cause, because the effect doesn't have the power, materials, and resources to produce itself. That came from outside of it. Right? And this is the law of life that we're going to be looking at and covering and talking about this weekend, and that is taking to give. Taking to give. Right? So, since everything functions by law, and there's the law of cause and effect, if you have an effect and you take it away, but the cause is still there, what must happen? So you have an effect and you take the effect away, but the cause is still there. What has to happen? All right, it's got to either produce the same effect again, or it has to produce a different effect to manifest that the cause is still there. Because every cause will produce an effect. So by law, I don't care what the treatment is. I don't care if it's medication. I don't care if it's herbs. I don't care if it's surgery. I don't care if it's hydrotherapy. Whatever it might be, by law, any treatment that takes care of the effect, the symptoms, but does not take care of the cause at the roots, will produce side effects. Right? It will produce side effects by law. Right? It has to. Because if you don't remove the cause, it must manifest in effects, right? Somehow. So let's look at health from another angle. We're going to look at it from a road standpoint. And on the road, you have health. And you have proper function, and it's comfortable on the road. And of course, you need things to stay on the road, like oxygen, water, food, and warmth, and so on. And there is something that happens when you get off the road. There's discomfort and there's dysfunction. And the farther you get off the road, the more discomfort and dysfunction that there is. And there's a definition of being on the road versus off the road, and the defining line between on the road and off the road is law. So there's always law that defines whether you're inside the law and on the road, or whether you're outside of the law, you're off the road, right? And let's take warmth for our example. If your body temperature goes up too high, how do you feel? Yeah, you feel hot, right? That's symptoms, right? So you have symptoms. They're uncomfortable to let you know you're outside of the law so that you can do something about it to get back. So you can sweat, so you can fan yourself, so you can turn the AC on, so you can take a cold drink, something of that nature to get your temperature back down so you feel comfortable again. If your temperature goes in the opposite direction, how do you feel? Cold, right? So you feel different when you go one way as you feel when you go the other way. And now you do something different. Instead of drinking cold water, you drink hot water. Instead of fanning yourself, you cover yourself up. Instead of sweating, you shiver, and so on, so that you can get your temperature back up and feel comfortable again. Now, if you don't stop at symptoms, and the symptoms are like the rumble strips on the side of the road, they let you know you're getting off the road, right? They're there to let you know you're getting off the road. If you don't just stop at symptoms, you end up at disease. And disease, now it doesn't just feel bad, it is bad, right? Things are really not working. If it's temperature up, like is in this example, then you might have heat exhaustion or heat stroke. You're getting dehydrated. You might have a horrible headache. You might be getting confused, feeling nauseous and other things like that. It's bad, and you feel really bad because you really need to do something about it in order to get back, in order to have comfort and things to function well. And the same thing in the opposite direction. If you're really cold and you're staying that way, then there's frostbite, there's chilblains, other things that can be very problematic. It feels really bad because you need to do something really serious about it right now in order to get back into the proper function so that you can feel comfortable. And if it feels bad enough, you'll do something daring enough in order to get back to normal. Or actually let somebody help you. Now, of the two species of humans in the room, I know I'm using the wrong term on purpose. Of the two species of humans in the room, which one will go farther before they'll ask for help? All right. All right. So everybody recognizes that, even the doctor. The guys will be half dead before they ask for help, and the ladies are the ones that are usually asking for help earlier, right? Now, if you don't stop at disease and you continue going, either way, you're going to end up with death. And you don't really want to go there, right? So symptoms are there to prevent you from dying, right? Symptoms are there to prevent you from dying. Disease is there to prevent you from dying. It's there to let you know something is wrong. You need to do something about it. It's not the symptom that's wrong, and it's not the disease that's wrong. The symptom and the disease are not wrong. They're right. They let you know something's wrong. What's wrong is you're outside of the law somehow, in some area of the life, or maybe multiple areas. Now, do we need love as well? Right? Do we need love as well? Yeah, of course, right? So is it possible that there's a law that governs love, and that if we get outside of that law, there can be symptoms, disease, and even death? Yeah, yeah. So that's something that we need to consider as well. So health is proper function, which is the effect of staying within the law. Disease is dysfunction, which is the effect of going outside of the law. And symptoms and disease are like the rumble strips and the fire alarm that let you know something's wrong. They're actually part of the solution, not a part of the problem. Right? Part of the solution. What's that? That's right. It's like a stop sign on the road that's telling you to stop and don't go there because you're going to have problems. Right? You're going to have problems, right? So the law of cause and effect shows us that every effect must have a cause, that every cause must produce an effect, that if the effect is present, then the cause is also present, and that if the cause is removed, the effect must go away. Right? The cause is removed, the effect must go away. And no effect can produce itself because it depends upon power, materials, and resources outside of itself in order to function and to exist. So that means that you will never find an effect without a cause. You will never find an effect without a cause. Right? What do we call it when we see something that appears to be an effect without a cause? It's a common word that we use. Chance. Chance. Right? Chance is an effect without a cause. Right? There's no such thing as chance, and there's nothing that's truly random. Random is just our inability to predict the outcome. Right? So let's take from a microscopic level the cells of your body. You've got 50 to 100 trillion cells if you're an adult, and you have over 250 different types of cells in your body, and every different type of cell has a different type of function. And cells are kind of like little factories, and factories, of course, produce products. And so every cell and every cell type in your body produces certain types of products that are beneficial to other cells and other parts of the body and other things in general, right? And your function as a body as a whole is dependent upon your function of the individual cells. So if you lose a particular type of cell, then whatever functions are specific to that type of cell, you will lose, right? You'll lose it. For example, diabetes, type 1 diabetes. So in type 1 diabetes, you have an individual that has an autoimmune disease. That autoimmune disease attacks a particular type of cell in the pancreas, and that cell is called a beta cell or a beta islet cell. Right? Anybody know what is specific that that beta islet cell produces? Insulin. Right? Insulin. There's no other cells in the body that produce insulin, and so if you lose your beta islet cells, you've lost your ability to produce any insulin in the body. And insulin is necessary in order to get sugar from outside of the cell inside of the cell. And the cell uses sugar for fuel. So if you can't get the sugar from outside to inside of the cell, guess what happens to the cell? It's going to die because it runs out of fuel. So somebody who dies from diabetes, type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, because of the sugar issues, it's not because they have high blood sugar levels that they die. It's because they have low insulin levels and they can't get the sugar into the cells, and so the cells starve and they die, right? So if you have the cause of your type 1 diabetes, it will immediately begin to produce an effect. So if the cause comes right now, then immediately the effect begins. But it can take time for the effect to get big enough so that you can notice it. Since there are so many beta islet cells, you don't necessarily kill them all off at one time, and so it can be a process in killing them off. And once a certain number of them get killed off, then you can start manifesting the problems of insulin resistance and diabetes and so on. And some disease processes are faster, others are slower. Some of them it might be seconds, minutes, or hours between the cause and the manifestation and the effect. Others, it can be years or even decades between there. Some individuals, their cancer doesn't show up for years. Right? They find it after it's been there for years. Others, diabetes, it's almost a decade before, usually in process, before an individual starts manifesting problems with type 2 or it used to be adult onset diabetes. But too many kids having it nowadays, and so it's just type 2. Right? But if you want to know the cause, so if anybody's interested in knowing the cause of your disease, then it must meet these criteria. Right? The cause must be in place before you ever had your first symptoms of whatever the condition was. Right? Cause had to be in place before you had your first symptoms. And if your disease is a continuing process, which diseases are, then the cause has to still be there as long as the disease continues. Right? It's got to be there as long as the disease continues. So it's got to meet those two things. It was in your life before the first symptom, and it's still in your life now as long as the disease continues to progress. That is going to be where you're looking for the cause. Right? So if you had the first symptoms when you were 21 and you got divorced when you were 45, well, the divorce is not the cause for your disease. Right? Can't be, doesn't meet the criteria. And so on. Right? So it's got to be there before, it's got to still be there now and in your life. Because if the cause is removed, then the effect has to begin going away. Now, the going away can take time. It can be a process of doing so, but it's got to start going away the moment the cause is removed. Right? Now, every cell functions by the law of life. And so every cell, remember the law of life is take to give, right? Take to give, right? So every cell must first take what it needs in order to then give something away. So a cell needs resources and it needs power in order to function. Just like an engine needs fuel and it needs something to ignite that fuel. Right? That's right. The spark plug is what ignites it. In a gasoline engine, in a diesel engine, you still have a battery, but you have a mechanism that causes pressure with the piston, and when the pressure gets high enough, then it'll ignite the fuel and then cause your compression. But without that battery, you're not starting either of the vehicles, even if they have a full gas tank or a full diesel tank. That's right. That's right. All right, we got somebody that knows their stuff. Good. All right. So the cell itself has to take in the resources, the power, in order for it to function, and it's going to do so, and in the process, give things away, produce a product. So what's the fuel for the cells? Okay, so sugar. All right. Yes, sugar. So you've got oxygen that's also part of the fuel. You've got water that's part of the fuel. And you have those nutrients that are that's part of the fuel as well. So the fuel for cells is chemicals. Right? The chemicals are the fuel that the cells need in order for them to function, right? And every chemical is going to get into the body through a particular organ or organ system. In the case of oxygen, it's coming in through the respiratory tract and the lungs. But when it comes in, do you need oxygen just in your lungs? No, you need it. Every cell you want to live, you got to get oxygen to. So how are you going to get it everywhere? All right, through the blood. That's right. So there's a transport mechanism, which is the blood, and the blood takes that to every part of the body, hopefully, because the parts it can't get to are the parts that are going to die. Right? And that's why it's important to have good circulation, there's an old saying, perfect health depends upon perfect circulation, because the blood carries the fuel that the cells need in order for them to function. And the cells will function the way that they're supposed to if they have a sufficient amount of the different chemicals that they need. But if they have too little or they have too much, now you're going to end up having problems. You'll have deficiencies or you'll have toxicities because you have just too much or you have too little of what's needed. But if you have your vehicle full of gas, you still can't go anywhere because you need something to ignite it, right? Something to get it going. So in the cell, let's say, for instance, this is a liver cell, a hepatocyte. What's going to get it going? What's going to ignite it in order to get it functioning? Right? Well, that power, according to the law of thermodynamics, has to come from where? Inside of the cell or outside of the cell? Outside of the cell, right? And the cell does function as an electrical unit. All of the cells do. They regulate positively and negatively charged particles inside and outside the membrane. They maintain a voltage difference between inside and outside. There's current when those chemicals flow in and out. There's resistance across that membrane. It's electrical, right? So the cells function as electrical units, but they also need chemicals as the fuel. So they're electrochemical units, right? As the cells function. And that electrical impulse that's going to get that going and also regulate its function is going to come through your central nervous system, right? So you put a little cap with electrodes on the top of somebody's head, and guess what it can measure? Yeah, brain waves, which are electrical. It's electrical activity, and that electrical activity of the brain waves is going to get to your liver how? All right, through the nerves, right? So you're going to have a chain of different nerves that are going to be going from the brainstem to the, from the cortex of the brain to the midbrain to the brainstem and down the spinal cord, and then through. Well, in this case, for the liver, it would be the cortex to the midbrain to the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve down to the liver, and so on. And then that's going to release chemicals. And then are the chemicals going to, what should I say? Are the chemicals going to force their way inside the cell? No, because the law of life says that everything must first take in order to give. So the cell itself will take in the chemicals that are released and start changing their function, right, based upon that signal that comes from the nerves. Now, the brain, the central nervous system, where does it get the power from? Because the power has to come from where? Inside or outside? Outside. And the power is not the sugar, that's the fuel. Right? It's not the nutrients. What's the spark that gets the brain going? And the brain functioning, and the brain electrical activity going, because that has to come outside of it. Right? It comes from spiritual information. Right? And one form of spiritual information is love. Right? Love is a form of spiritual information. Now remember, when we were looking at the letter, right, we were thinking about the letter and we were extracting information from it, but were we actually getting anything physically from the letter? No, it's spiritual, right? It's spiritual information that you're getting, and it's by spiritual information that we function, because we're not just physical, we're spiritual as well. Right? We're not just a physical being, we're a spiritual being too, and we have a spirit. Right? Just like a computer has hardware and software, the computer has no function if it just has hardware. The computer has no function if it just has software. It's only as you have the hardware and the software together that you have any function whatsoever, right? And it's true in us as well. You've got a spirit and you've got a body, and you have absolutely no function if you only have body, and you have no function if you only have spirit. It's only as the two come together that you have function, right? And when you bring the software and hardware together, the software doesn't stop being software, the hardware doesn't stop being hardware, and they each have their different components of that function, but there's no function unless they're together. So in the spirit and the body, the spirit doesn't stop being spirit when it comes together with the body doesn't stop being body, and they both have their individual components of function, but there's no function unless they're together. Right? There's only function when they're together. So that spiritual information is brought in by the spirit, made available to the cortex of the brain. That is transmitted down the different nerves of the body, and then that signal made available to the different cells of the body in order to control how the cells function. Right? How many cells in the body are controlled? All of them. And where are they controlled through? Right here. Central nervous system is the controller mechanism for everything that's going on in the body, right? And so there we go. Oh, zip. Hello, there we go. All right, so that is the mind, and the mind is your central nervous system with the spirit together with it. If you only had a brain, you wouldn't be able to think, right? If you only had a spirit, you wouldn't be able to think. It's together, and that's your mind, right? So what information does the mind need in order to function properly, and how does the mind process information? So you've got information, and information comes in one of two forms. It's either truth or it's error, right? That's it, truth or error. And when that information comes to the mind, it's in one of two forms, and the mind must evaluate that information to make a determination. And the determination is that you're either going to believe that it's the truth, or you're going to believe that it's error. And everything that you believe is truth, you will accept. And everything that you believe is error, you will reject. Right? That's how we process information in the mind. But in order to evaluate information, you need something. You have to have something to compare the information to determine whether it fits or whether it doesn't fit, right? So you have to have a standard by which you evaluate. Right? If you have a bad standard, then you're going to take the truth and believe it to be error and reject it. You're going to take error, believe it to be the truth, and accept it, and you'll be completely wrong. But what do you think about yourself? You think you're right because you're functioning according to your standard, right? You're functioning according to your standard. Now, if you have a mixed standard where you've got some right, some wrong, and so on, then you're going to take some truth, believe it to be truth, and accept it. Other truth, believe it to be errors, and reject it. And same thing with error, and it's going to be a mixed bag. You'll be partially right, you'll be partially wrong, but what will you think about yourself? That you're right, because you're functioning according to your standard. That's right. Now, only if you have a perfect standard will you take all truth, believe it to be a truth, and accept it, and all error and believe it to be error and reject it, and actually be correct while you think you are correct. Right? So everyone thinks they're correct, but the question is, how many of us are? How many of us are? Right? So when it comes to truth and error, truth is in harmony with and results in proper function. Truth is always aligned with function, and error is aligned with dysfunction. So when it comes to the mind, and the spiritual information that the mind needs in order to function properly, to then control the body and its functions properly, what does it need? Does it need truth or error? It needs truth, right? And when truth is the foundation of the information that the Spirit is bringing in, then that is going to ultimately result in proper function from this pathway. I'm not saying there can't be dysfunction other ways, but from this pathway, if truth is the foundation of what the mind is bringing in, then it can control the functions of the body the way that it's supposed to. But when error is the basis of the information that the mind is taking in, and that is made available to the cells of the body, then that's going to ultimately result in dysfunction. Right? Dysfunction. So, is it important what the roots are and the sources? Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Now, there's a few other causes of dysfunction that we need to cover, and then we'll close for this evening. And we'll get on to tomorrow with some more topics. But we do need to cover these first, because this is not the only cause for dysfunction in the body. You can have dysfunction because of inheritance. Everybody's heard about inheritance, and we know. You go to the doctor, and if you've got cancer, they ask you, do you have family members that had cancer, and at what ages, and so on, because now you have a risk factor for having cancer yourself, and so on. Well, that inheritance comes in the form of DNA. There is epigenetic information that is also transmitted from generation to generation as well. But the basic blueprint that the cells use to build everything physically is the DNA. And when it comes to inheritance, you have a defect in a section of the section of the DNA called a gene that comes from a prior generation. And genes code for proteins. Proteins make up function, they make up structure, they make up the products that the cell produces, and so on. And when you have that dysfunction in a gene, a bad blueprint, and that comes to you as a single cell, right? Then what happens from that single cell? It's going to multiply and multiply and multiply. And from that one cell, you end up with 50 to 100 trillion different trillion cells in your body. So if you inherited a problem from a prior generation, how many cells will the problem be in? All of the cells. They'll be in all of the cells, but not every cell uses every gene. If they did, there would be only one type of cell, right? But if you're building a building, you don't use every bit of the blueprint for every part of the building. You need the bathroom instructions for the bathroom, and you need the bedroom instructions for the bedroom, and you need the foundation instructions for the, and so on and so forth. So you use certain parts of the blueprint for certain parts of the structure. Same thing in the body. It uses some of the genes in certain cells. It'll use other genes in other cells. But every cell of a particular type, if it's one type of cell, it'll use the same set of genes amongst that whole type of cell, right? So if it's a hepatocyte in the liver, it'll use the same set of genes to be a hepatocyte. If it's a cell in the kidney, well, it's going to use the same set of genes for that cell in the kidney, and so on, right? So every cell of a particular type is going to have the problem in it. Right? Every cell of a particular type. So the dysfunction is going to be found, if it's inheritance, is going to be found throughout all cells of a particular type. It will not be localized within a particular cell type. For example, if you have an individual that has a thyroid problem and they have a nodule here and a nodule there, can that be inheritance? The answer is no. It cannot be inheritance. Because if it's inheritance, it has to affect all of the cells of a certain type in the thyroid. Now, the thyroid has 4 different types of cells, but it has to affect all the cells of a particular type in the thyroid if it's inheritance, because all of them have the defective gene, and all of them use the defective gene. And so if you have a spot here that's a problem and a spot there that's a problem, the cause is not inheritance. Can't be, right? So if you have colon cancer that develops in a certain part of the colon, can that be inheritance? No, can't be inheritance unless there's only that type of cell in that location of the colon, right? If that's the case, yes, it can develop and be inheritance in that spot, but it's not going to develop in an adult. If it's inheritance and it's in that spot and the defective gene is there, it's going to start when somebody's little, right? So if it starts later in somebody's life, it's not inheritance. If it starts in a localized place amongst other tissue of the same type, it's not inheritance either. If you have arthritis in certain joints, but not all joints, that is not inheritance. Can't be, right? And inheritance doesn't create new function, it just inhibits existing function. So there's a lot of things that the healthcare world ascribes to inheritance that cannot be ascribed to inheritance. Can't be, right? Now, are there genetic issues associated with all these dysfunctions? Yes, they are, yeah, and it's there as a kind of predisposing factor, but it's not the trigger. It's not the cause. Something else is triggering it in order to make it start going, right? Now you can have environment, and environment, the cells exist within a certain temperature and pressure. And if it's too high pressure, like you ran into the car at 70 miles an hour, running really fast, or you weren't going very fast, but the car was, and it ran into you, well, that's too much pressure, and you're going to have dysfunction from that. Or if you burn yourself or freeze yourself or so on, it's trauma. So what trauma does is it takes structure and it damages it, right? It disrupts it. And since function is associated with structure, if you damage the structure, you damage the function too, right? And so trauma can be localized. You can be cutting the carrots and get the wrong carrot, and then go ouch, 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 and so on, and you got one finger, but your other fingers are okay. Or you can be hammering the nail and you got the wrong nail, and ouch, 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 and but you got one nail and the other nails are doing okay. So it can be localized, and if the damage is beyond the capacity to heal, the effect can be permanent. For example, if you cut off your arm, you and I are not salamanders. We don't have the capacity to grow back another arm. If you got a good surgeon and the cut and so on was just right, you might be able to sew it back on and have a healing process and then a functioning arm later. Praise the Lord. If you don't, you're not growing back a new one. And so the effect is going to be permanent if it's beyond your capacity to heal. But smaller injuries that remain permanent are usually a part of the healing process that went dysfunctional. So if you ever knew somebody that had keloids, so they had a cut, and then the cut grew, and it grew outside of, the scar tissue grew outside of the cut and got big and somewhat unsightly around whatever the cut was. Well, that's not caused by the trauma. It's a problem with the healing process, right? And we'll look at that in a minute. So trauma doesn't actually create function. It just disrupts existing function. Right? It disrupts existing function. Now, you can have dysfunction because of chemicals. And this one, our scientific community attributes a lot to. We believe a lot of this, but a lot of it is unwarranted, and we'll talk about it in just a minute. Well, we'll talk about it now. So you can have what you need, and you can have too much of it. That's called a toxicity. You can have too little of it, and that's a deficiency. or you can have the wrong stuff, right? Like poisons or envenomations, and that's not going to work very well either. So you can have a number of different ways that chemicals can cause problems: poisons, envenomations, toxicities, deficiencies. What these do is they take an existing function in the body, an existing chemical pathway, and they disrupt it. Right? They disrupt an existing process from being able to happen. They don't create a new process. Right? Toxins and envenomations don't go in there and create a new process. They just interrupt an existing process. Whether, like certain snake venom, it interrupts the coagulation cascade, so you can't blood clot, and so you bleed, right? Or other, coral snakes and so on that have a neurotoxin. It goes in there and interrupts with certain chemicals that are needed in the process of nerve transmission. And so then the nerve can't send its signals like it's supposed to. So it takes an existing process and interrupts it. That's what chemicals can do. So here you have the case of gout. Somebody has gouty arthritis in the left great toe, and anybody know what causes gout? All right, I heard it, uric acid. All right, how much? So if I want to know whether you have gout and you've got a big painful left toe like we have here, I can send you to the lab, and of course they're going to draw blood from your toe, right? No? Where do they draw blood from? From your arm. But your problem's in your toe. How do you know the problem in your toe when you got the sample from your arm? And your arm didn't have gout in it, but your toe had gout in it. Come on. All right, so circulation, it shows up in the blood. So what level of uric acid do I have to have in my blood here versus my blood there versus my blood there versus my blood here versus my blood here? Did they ever ask you, oh, it's in your left toe, so we need to get it from your left arm? No, it doesn't matter. If they missed in the left arm, they can go to the right arm. Or if they missed in the right, they can go to the left. Or they can go somewhere else and they can get it and they can get the level, right? So what causes this? Cholesterol, right? So I can send you to the lab and see what your cholesterol levels are, and I can find out that they're high, and I can go, okay, well, then you got a cholesterol problem. And what about cancer? This is, let's say that's left breast cancer, right? So you have a male left breast cancer. It does happen. And so we know that there's, red meats, processed red meats, class 1A carcinogen. So maybe they've been eating bratwurst and salami and, hot dogs and other things like that, and now they got breast cancer. And of course, what would we do? We'd advise them not to eat those things. But a problem is this old chemistry thing called diffusion, right? And diffusion is where you get a substance in a liquid environment and it will eventually mix up so that it's an even concentration throughout, right? And in your cardiovascular system, there's a lot of mixing that happens because there's a pump pumping and blood that's flowing. And so if you measure blood levels of anything from one level to, from one location to another location, it's essentially the same. Essentially, right? There's slight differences, but it's essentially the same. So how much uric acid did you have going to the left foot as opposed to going to the right foot? The same, but the problem's in the left foot. So is it the uric acid that's the cause? No, it can't be. But you take medication like allopurinol to decrease the uric acid level, and the gout goes away. Okay, so what was the concentration of cholesterol after the plaque versus at the plaque versus before the plaque? The same. So why do you have a collection of cholesterol right here, but you don't over there and you don't right there? If it was just the cholesterol, it should look like this, right? This is a natural process of accumulation of a substance inside a flowing, a tube that has something flowing through it. It should look like that, but it doesn't. It looks like this. Right? And so you go walking down the beach and you see this, what do you conclude? Yeah, somebody's gifted. Now, how many of you conclude that the sand did a wonderful job of putting itself together and making a sandcastle? Well, no, nobody. Now, can you make a sandcastle without sand? No, you got to have sand to make the sandcastle, but it's not the sand that makes the sandcastle. So you've got to have the animal protein and other things like that and so on. You got to have the chemicals, but when you ate the animal protein and the bratwurst and the salami, didn't that go to your right chest as well as your left chest? Yeah, so why do you have the cancer in the left chest and not in the right chest? Like nobody's asking these questions. Yeah. Anyways, soapbox. All right, so chemicals can cause dysfunction in a certain type of cell first because some cells will utilize certain chemicals faster. Like if you run out of iodine, what's going to get hit first? Your thyroid, because your thyroid uses iodine very quickly. So if you run out, you're going to see it first in the thyroid. But it shouldn't be spots of the thyroid here and there. It should be the thyroid, right? So just like inheritance, it should be throughout a particular cell type, not spots here and there within a particular cell type. And chemicals can be used as a part of a disease process, as a cofactor, but they're not the cause of the disease process, just like sand is not the cause of the sandcastle, but you had to have sand to make the sandcastle, right? So when you remove the cofactor, when you remove the chemical, you take the uric acid and decrease its levels and so on, the condition goes away, the disease process doesn't manifest itself, but did you take care of the sandcastle builder? No, all you did is washed away the sandcastle, but you didn't do anything about the sandcastle builder. So the chemical is not the cause, it can't create a process, it's only used as a part of a process. So that leaves us with the mind. And the mind is amazing because you've got connections where you have a certain spot in your body that's connected with a certain spot in your brain, and everything is wired and regulated very specifically. And everybody wiggles their toes from the upper inner portion of their brain. And everybody wiggles their tongue from the outer portion of their brain. And everybody feels their fingers from the somewhat upper lateral aspect of their brain and so on. It's all well regulated in everybody, right? It's all well regulated. And everything that's in the body has a connection and a representation in the brain. Right? Everything that's in the body has a connection and a representation in the brain. So guess what? You've got a nerve that's going to that joint. And that nerve is bringing a signal from up here. And if it's your left great toe, that was your right upper inner cortex. And the signal originates up in there, and it's carried via that pathway down to that particular joint. And the nerve releases a signal, and living cells in that area pick up the signal, and they concentrate uric acid. Because the uric acid can't concentrate itself. So the living cells themselves concentrate the uric acid, spit it out into the joint, and now you've got uric acid crystals, and you've got gout. But the origin of the problem is right up here in the mind, right? And here you've got a nerve ending that goes to that part of the artery that doesn't go to the different parts of the artery, so that a signal is sent, and now white blood cells that are traveling through here, they pick up that signal, and they've got cholesterol on board, and they go, oh, hey, there's a problem, let's go check it out. And while they do so, some of them die, and they leave the cholesterol behind. And as long as the signal is there, the process is going to continue, right? And it's going to collect in that area while it's not really collecting much over here and down there. And you have a tumor, and going to the center of that tumor is a nerve. And you cut the nerve going to the center of a tumor, you change how the tumor behaves. It does. It changes how the tumor behaves. And in fact, there's research that shows that every step along the way in cancer, from its initiation all the way till metastasis and being able to get in different tissues, all influenced by the mind, by the nervous system. All influenced by that. So the mind can control processes, it can start and stop processes, it can regulate all homeostatic mechanisms in your body, like heart rate and blood pressure and fluid volume and electrolytes and pH balance and all that kind of stuff. Its effects can be generalized, like when you get scared when the big dog is chasing you. Or it can be very localized, like that spot in that artery and getting blood to that part of the heart, right? And it controls the immune system function, which means that it's ultimately in control of inflammation. And it's the primary, but not the only, controller of cells, tissues, organs, and organ systems and their function. And when we take a survey of all the different things that cause dysfunction in the body, the mind is 90% of it. Right? 90% of the time, the diseases and the dysfunctions that we find in the body have its origin in the mind. And because every effect has a cause, and because all energy necessary to come for a system to function comes from outside that system, that means the cause can never be found where the effect is. Right? The cause can never be found where the effect is. So if you have a problem in a certain part of the body and you go to that part of the body to try to find out what the problem is, you'll never find it. Because the problem had to come from outside. Had to come from outside of that. Right? So you always have to look outside of where the manifestation is to look for the cause. Right? And for the mind, when we believe error, and that's the foundation of the information that we take, that's the foundation of dysfunction. And the question is, what error are we believing? What error are we taking in that's leading to that physical dysfunction? And we're going to be looking at that tomorrow. And we're going to be, oh, you wanted a picture. We're going to be looking at that tomorrow. And we're going to be looking at the different cognitive distortions that we have. And then we're going to start looking at how does that impact our relationships. And then we're going to get into deeper issues and talk about things like, why do we always feel sorry for the person who didn't commit the affair? And why do we always feel upset when somebody didn't show up on the blind date? And why do we take things personally? And so on. All of these are because of lies that we believe, but almost everybody believes them, so we think they're normal. So we're going to go there tomorrow. We're going to get deeper and seek to understand these different things. And then we'll also continue into Sunday afternoon. And for those that are interested, we'll have the Law of Life book, which we're covering here, and other materials on Sunday afternoon. Tom.
Thank you, Dr. Mark. Just going to let you go really quick, but first of all, did you raise your hand if you enjoyed tonight's talk? Raise your hand if you know of somebody who should be here or should hear this online. All right, here's what I want you to do. First of all, you can share the link for somebody who's far away or infirmed or whatnot at bgsda.org. There's a link there to be able to live stream it. Check that out. And also, you can text for the English-speaking folks. I want you to pull out your cell phone right now. Pull out your cell phone. Pull out your cell phone. Text, send flyer. For the Spanish-speaking folks, to Danielle's going to give that. For the English-speaking folk, 419-283-4001. And that way you can send this flyer or take one with you if you have somebody that's close to you. You can give them one, get them here, or get them again.
What's the number for texting? Send flyer?
Send flyer.
And that's the number for texting?
Yeah. 419-283-4001. All right, so if you need a flyer sent that way, fine, or you can take a picture of it if you're tech savvy or semi-tech savvy. Do that. At any rate, we want you here. 10 sharp, we're going to start tomorrow, 10 sharp. Until 6:30, and then followed by a Q&A opportunity. Lunch will be provided at 1 p.m., so be here for all of that. God bless you and have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow at 10. Are we just leaving these things?
Yeah, I think somebody can probably figure out whose is went. There we go.
Encourage you. There's no reason to start tomorrow. So I just want to get that out there vocal.
Yeah. Okay.
I know. That's my job.